Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are talking about breast screening. And there has been a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, which is going to revolutionize some parts of healthcare. And one of those areas is in imaging and around screening for breast cancer. And what we are specifically talking about today is how COVID-19 is affecting breast cancer screening, because unless you have been living under a rock, in fact, even if you are living under a rock, you have heard of COVID-19. And what it has done is it has stopped all the screening programs that currently run within healthcare systems. And what that means is that there are millions of women who are waiting to be screened but cannot be screened because of COVID-19. So we've brought together some people here on this panel to talk about what that impact is and how AI could play a possible role in that. So along with me on this panel, I have Peter, Mary Beth, and Gerald. Peter is the founder of Kheiron Medical, which is a machine learning AI imaging business based in London. Mary Beth is an innovation strategist in healthcare. She's also a breast cancer patient and is helping Kheiron expand their footprint across the world. Dr. Gerald Lip is the clinical director of Northeast Scotland breast screening program in NHS Grampian. So it is my pleasure to have all of you here, and we are hoping to look at this problem from different angles. So why don't I first go to Dr. Lip? Gerald, tell us a little bit very quickly about breast screening, because a lot of people in the audience may not be familiar with what it is and on what scale does this operate. And I think when I first read about the scale, it was mind-boggling. Thousands and thousands of scans are done across the country. So give us a little bit of a flavor of what would have been happening if we were not in the middle of COVID-19.
Thanks very much, Vishal. And I think that anybody who's got a mother, a sister, or a grandma will be affected by this, because any woman between the age of 50 to 70 has breast screening in the UK. It's a 3-year program. It runs like clockwork. And we just go around with our mobiles around the country, and we screen women. In my center, 25,000 women are invited a year, and they come just like clockwork in this program in a 3-year cycle. So that's 75,000 women over 3 years. Now imagine now that we've thrown a big sort of stick into that wheel and pulled the whole thing out, and we paused the program. It's been paused since the lockdown in the UK for 3 months now. And it's likely that it will take a bit of time to restart. So another 2 months restarting. So that will be 5 months out. And if you imagine that 2,000 a year, 2,000 a month, clocking up now 10,000 a month delayed in screening. It's like pulling the emergency anchor on a super tanker, and now restarting the engines takes just as long to get back as well.
So that sort of gives you the scale of it. And across the UK, it'll be much bigger, and across the world, it's a very, very big number. But tell me one thing, and I think this is something which everybody would like to know, is what happens if someone is not screened? So I can understand that purely from a scheduling point of view, people who have not been screened have to be screened in the future, which means that you have to have greater capacity to screen. But can you tell us a little bit about what happens, or what are the benefits of having screening?
So the important thing to get across first is that screening is for women who don't have symptoms. We're looking for the disease in a well woman population, and we want to catch it within a certain period. In the UK, it's 3 years. Other countries, it's 2 years. And if you have a delay that goes on a bit longer, there's a chance that a small cancer that's growing there that we would find with early screening would get bigger and bigger during that time. And that may have repercussions later on if we're delayed even further in terms of morbidity and mortality if a small cancer starts growing. But I would reiterate, if you feel a lump, or you're a woman that is of that screening age who feels a symptom, to go to your GP. Otherwise, the screening programs will catch up, but it will take a long time for us to get back to where we were.
Right, and one of the things which we are talking about today is that how AI could help this. How can we use technology to deal with this backlog that we have now ended up creating?
Yes, and I think that there are three key points to get across there, which is that AI could provide us with quality, reassurance, and resilience in the service. From a quality perspective, I've worked with CAD in the past, and while CAD is good, computer-aided detection, it called back too many suspicious areas, which turned out to be nothing, leading to more anxiety in women, having a high recall rate. From what I've seen in AI and what's been published so far, AI is almost as good or as good as a human reader, and is able to then give us that quality and confidence as we are recalling with the AI. In the UK, it's a 2 consultant reader system. So one consultant reads and then the AI reads, or the other way around. And that leads to the second point, which is reassurance, because you can reassure the ladies. If the AI is doing your read, your turnaround time is much faster. You can read and read and read within the same day, because the AI is going to read you automatically and you're going to read the same day. Whereas pre-COVID, there were delays of up to 2 weeks in reading.
Right.
So now imagine a lady who's been stuck now for 5 months waiting, and you add on a little bit more time there for a few more weeks, that level of anxiety and worry just goes up. And with regards to resilience, I think anyone who's got staff pre-COVID, you always had the same problems of staffing with regards to holidays, Christmas, whereas AI is there. It's resilient, it works, it can keep working during that period of time, and it backs up the human in that factor, in that reading.
So I will come back to one of the points you raise here, which is around the quality of screening. But let me go to Mary Beth. Mary Beth, you have a very distinct view of this problem. You have worked for most of your life in innovation strategy, but you had at one point had a mammogram and it turned out to be positive. And so you've had that experience. Can you talk a little bit about, from, if you like, the opposite side of Gerald's view, because Gerald as a provider sees lots of people who go through the screening program. You as a person who has gone through that screening program, can we get a view of what it was like and what you think is maybe happening right now when we are not able to screen women?
Well, I cannot imagine being a woman right now in the time of COVID and waiting for screening. And especially if there are hereditary tendencies towards breast cancer, it's a sort of a constant worry in the back of a woman's mind. My cancer was detected in December of this past year, in 2019. And while it was detected early, I was extremely fortunate because it allowed me to have options in my treatment. And in fact, my cancer was a stage 1 invasive ductal carcinoma. And because it was found early, it was still anxiety producing because there were steps and phases that I had to move through where there were many unknowns around the treatment.
Right. And so you believe that screening has helped you, your cancer being picked early, and was able to be treated with much less invasive treatment than otherwise would have required. And presumably, a lot of the women that are waiting now do not know what has happened, and they probably will be their disease will probably be progressing further. So can you give us some view? We got a view from the UK side. Can you give us a little bit of a view on the US side? How it is done in the US? It's a much bigger market, and there is very high level of awareness around breast cancer through charities and through the media. So can you tell us a little bit about how big that effort is and how important that is in the healthcare system, and a few other things that you've observed?
So in the U.S. healthcare system, women, once you reach the age 50, are annually screened. And so annually, I've been going in for mammograms for many years. And I go to the same imaging center, and they had a baseline of my data. And so you can imagine, of all women starting at age 50 in the United States, the expectation as part of your wellness checkup is to get a baseline mammogram. And that is an enormous number of women who are assuming that they will have their mammograms done every year.
Right. Okay, and what has been the experience of using AI in the US? How are people seeing this? And this is a question that I wanted to come back to Gerald as well on, is that we have gone in a relatively short period of time from something AI being seen as competing with radiologists to assisting radiologists. Have you heard? Have you experienced something like that?
You know, as a patient, I have not experienced AI yet. So I have a bit of a dual experience from the Kheiron perspective and working with a tremendous team there, but then also as a patient and going through routine screening, being told I have a suspicious finding that led to a second mammogram and an ultrasound to confirm whether that suspicious finding was actually a true mass was extremely stressful. And that part of it, I would have loved to have had AI involved in the midst of that screening process, just because I knew how many women receive false positives, and especially those of us who've had more than 10 years of baseline mammograms. 50 to 60% of us are likely to receive a false positive, which means we do have to go in thinking we may have cancer. So it would have been terrific to have had AI to confirm and support the radiologist's view of the mammogram.
So that's very, very helpful. So I think that comes back to Gerald's point earlier about false positives, about CAD creating a lot of false positives. So maybe I want to bring Peter into the conversation now. Peter, tell us a little bit about Mia and the product, and what has been your journey going through with this. And you are well familiar with this field for various reasons, and you went after this particular application and knowing that false positives is the issue. So tell us a little bit more.
Thank you, Vishal. One of the things I would start with is the viewpoint on how AI should work, and I believe the importance is that we see a lot of excitement about technology and AI adoption in the NHS and across the globe. But the point of view that I'm coming with is really that we need to take into account how we are impacting patients, how we're impacting doctors, and how we're impacting systems as a whole. So this point of view comes from my background, that I have multiple people, including my mom, working in radiology, and really seeing how radiologists are working firsthand on the front lines. Particularly seeing that doctors for a very long time have not been very well set up and supported and empowered to do their jobs extremely well. And I see a great opportunity with AI bringing in the tools and the help and the support that they rightly deserve, exactly for the benefit of the patients. And one of these things is really looking at what are the key problems that doctors want to solve. So it's one thing to do sort of AI in the lab, and trying to get some results that in a pristine kind of setup can beat radiologists. But really what we want to do is help radiologists. And really one of the key points is making sure that the false positives are as low as they can be. And with the new introduction of deep learning and some of the newer technologies that are employed in AI are really allowing us to move away from the previous CAD systems, ones that had extremely high false positives and were not useful for radiologists because they introduce more work rather than less work for them, especially in these times when COVID is increasing backlogs and introducing potentially more issues. We need to make sure that we're efficient, and efficiency is one of the things that we're bringing in. Besides a lot of the safety that is also required for any kind of AI product to be brought into practice. But this was one of the designing principles of Mia from the get-go, and I'm very happy to say that we were one of the first to get CE marks on this across the globe. I think 2018. And we're running large-scale trials to really look at all the KPIs, including low false positives, but also we're looking at multiple different KPIs of how we are supporting doctors as much and as close to practice as possible. Also, we're assessing how the safety of the algorithm can be best characterized, and the limitations of the software can be best characterized for real-world performance. So I think really taking the responsibility and really that we need to provide some kind of support for radiology, and especially breast screening in these times when there's more strain on the system is very important. But also taking the responsibility for doing it well, so extremely safely, and also in a way that it actually fits the reality of the workflow, not just in a lab setting, maybe a smaller, large scale lab setting.
So Peter, just that's very helpful to understand. But tell me a little bit more about how do you focus? So you have patient advocates in your company that are engaged, which are looking at it from a patient's point of view. You have number of radiologists. So what have you seen? What is it that is necessary to get your product into implementation? Because that's the challenge for most of the AI companies, is how do you get a product which is usable in a clinical setting? So what has been your experience in the UK and the US? Who is buying this product? Why are they buying your product? What are the boxes that need to be ticked?
Yeah, actually, there's a very long list of boxes to be ticked. Healthcare and AI together being a complicated multidisciplinary field. There are boxes that we need to really make sure that we're not biasing and not slowing down, not making radiologists, not making their job harder. That's number one. Really trying to do as much automation as possible, as Gerald said. Let's try to remove all the work that should not need to be done by radiologists. Needs to do the regulation is required. We also really need to make sure that there's a lot of data security, because we're dealing with patient data. We also need to make sure that there is something in technical terms called generalizability. This is exactly, generalizability is the attribute of a piece of technology that differentiates something that works in the lab compared to what works in real practice. Generalizability means that there's no systematic performance drop in any kind of sub part of the population.
In other
when we
words, that
deploy.
you can make it look really nice when your teacher's looking, but when you go out of the class, you just do the sloppy work. So this is because of the diversity of patients. You see the diversity of different machines, diversity of different systems, that creates more noise, and the algorithm, which is not well defined, is not able to deal with that. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think what we're coming to is really on the technology side is safety, to make sure that the AI is safe for all patients. And that really comes from making sure that the software works with diverse inputs. So whatever comes as an input, the software has a really good, reliable performance. That's what we want to get to. And that isn't that hard
only
problem.
one side of the axis? Because you could make it perfectly safe if you just had many recalls, right? You just essentially end up with lots of false positives, so that every woman who's screened ends up in downstream. That way you can pass the responsibility off to the surgeon and not have to worry about it. So it's not that easy. You have constraints on both sides.
That's this interesting decision theoretical problem. I would say that it's low safety if someone gets biopsies unnecessarily. I would say that doesn't add to your safety. So removing the false positives is important.
That's interesting. So bringing back Gerald briefly in this. Gerald, is this what you're looking at? What are the measures when you look at it? Someone could say that actually this makes the radiologist very safe, that you're not missing any cancers, but it then makes the surgical job much harder. So how do you deal with that?
I think if you're going to treat AI as a reader in your service, it's got to follow and have the same quality measures as you would as a human. So it's got to have a low recall rate. It's got to have a high positive predictive value for what it's calling back. And you don't want to call back a clinic of 10 ladies and biopsy 2 and then have 8 who are unnecessary. anesthetist being redirected to COVID work as well. So you're dealing with less resources on the post-screening side of things, not even counting what's happening pre-screening.
So one of the questions that I will ask you at the end of this panel is, what are your predictions for the next 6 months in your field, which is in terms of AI and cancer detection? But I will ask another question to Peter so that the others can think about that question, which I will ask them in a few minutes after Peter finishes the answer to this question. So Peter, tell me, what is the roadmap? What are you thinking? Where is your company going? Where do you think in 6 months' time will you have made impact in patients' lives?
I believe the stage where we're at is really coming through with the last pieces of the clinical evidence that is needed in order to prove generalizability and wide-scale patient safety, or characterize when we need to have safeguards on the algorithm. We're doing the first deployments as we speak across Europe, and also doing the first tests in the US. This is very important to be global. No AI can really be done locally. And also we're doing our regulatory updates and getting ready really to roll out as widely as possible. We have a couple of collaborations widely across the UK, Scotland, specifically. And I think the next steps, what I'm expecting in the next 6 months, is that we will get more deployments, actual real world feedback from how we're impacting a live workflow, and being able to iterate on that in a safe, constrained manner is really what we're looking for. And I believe what's even more exciting is what comes after 6 months. I believe that's when we would be able to have the real large scale impact. There's a couple of more pieces of evidence that we want to gather, and we would never stop wanting to gather more evidence and more input on how to improve our algorithms. But I believe in the next 6 months we will make the breakthrough with something that I think would be the first AI product that really can provide large scale automation, really saving, helping in the post-COVID situation.
Thank you. I will come to Gerald last, but Mary Beth, what do you think is happening in the next 6 months in this field?
For the next 6 months, it's going to be operational activation. And how do we emerge out of COVID with the backlog that's in place? And then how do we respond to a world in which COVID is a norm for the next 10, 12, 18 months?
Right. Okay. And Gerald, finally to you, because this panel is now coming to an end. So what do you think? So as we emerge out of this COVID, how do you think the backlog will get managed? What role will AI play in that?
I think the backlog might actually get a bit worse because there's going to be more safe distancing, more PPE from the technicians. Instead of doing a 7-minute appointment for a mammogram, you've got 10-minute appointments. So to be able to, you can't go back to where you were at 100%. We're probably going to go back to an 80% sort of function for the next months, keeping it safe. With regards to AI, yes, we're a partner with Kheiron in iCared, which is the Industrial Center for AI Research. And we have got the retrospective analysis done. And I think by the end, in 6 months' time, we would hope to be starting prospective work with Kheiron as well, looking at application of AI with readers in a workflow moving forward.
Excellent. So look, this has been really useful panel for me to understand a little bit more, particularly around the scale of breast screening that is done globally. And really thank you very much to you, Gerald, Peter, and Mary Beth, for your views. And now we will be off this stage, and we will be on a different stage where we will take a few questions and answers. So thanks again to everyone on the panel.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.